10 is over. Gordon Brown becomes Prime Minister and enters Downing Street with a promise to the British people.
I will try my utmost. This is my promise to all of the people of Britain.
It's goodbye from Tony Blair as PM and MP, stepping down for a new job tonight.
Au revoir, auf Wiedersehen and arrivederci.
MPs on all sides give him a rousing send-off as he makes his final appearance at the dispatch box. Now, the cabinet contenders line up. Who's set for a top job? Who's going to feel that great clunking fist? And the challenges ahead. Sky's top correspondents look at the big decisions facing the new Prime Minister. In the week's other big story, the clear-up continues after those devastating downpours, but there could be worse to come. A very good evening from Westminster. Our top story at 7 o'clock tonight on Sky News, where Gordon Brown has finally realised his lifelong ambition of becoming Prime Minister. Former Chancellor accepted the Queen's invitation to form a government when Tony Blair formally resigned after 10 years in Downing Street. That decade saw him transform the Labour Party's electoral fortunes, but suffer huge criticism over the war in Iraq. The new man entered number 10 promising a new kind of government with new priorities and a new spirit of public service. Now the focus is on who's going to be in that government, with the top jobs expected to be announced over the next 24 hours. At long last, it was Prime Minister Gordon Brown, Labour's 6th, the 52nd in British history. With his wife Sarah at his side, Mr. Brown promised to be a listening leader, promising change.
This will be a new government with new priorities. And I have been privileged to have been granted the great opportunity to serve my country. And at all times, I will be strong in purpose, steadfast in will, resolute in action, in the service of what matters to the British people, meeting the concerns and aspirations of our whole country.
He spoke of a new style of politics, harnessing the best of British.
I will reach out beyond narrow party interest. I will build a government that uses all the talents. I will invite men and women of goodwill to contribute their energies in a new spirit of public service to make our nation what it can be. And I am convinced that there is no weakness in Britain today that cannot be overcome by the strength of the British people. On this day, I remember words that have stayed with me since my childhood and which matter a great deal to me today. My school motto, I will try my utmost. This is my promise to all of the people of Britain. And now let the work of change begin. Thank you.
The transfer of power couldn't have been smoother, but judging by his words, the contrast in leadership priorities could be sharp. Just hours earlier, Tony Blair was moving out and moving on. After a decade in Downing Street, it came by the chestful. Chattels and achievements, furniture and failures. Was that a spinning machine or just an exercise bike? Personal and political baggage, now the stuff of memories and memoirs. Wearing a cheerful smile and his lucky brogues, Mr. Blair left for his 318th and last Prime Minister's question time. He was planning an elegant exit, but the cries of anti-war protesters along the way offered a reminder of the perils of Iraq, a blot on Mr. Blair's legacy and a warning to Gordon Brown. Inside the chamber, a rare apology and a tribute to the troops.
I've never come across people of such sustained dedication, courage and commitment. I am truly sorry about the dangers that they face today in Iraq and Afghanistan. I know some may think that they face these dangers in vain. I don't, and I never will. I believe they are fighting for the security of this country and the wider world, against people who would destroy our way of life.
Iraq dominated, but there were lighter moments as the old charmer of the chamber dealt with questions on Europe.
I'm afraid we can't agree on the treaty, but as for his good wishes to me, may I say to him, au revoir, auf Wiedersehen and arrivederci.
Faith.
I think I'm really not bothered about that one.
And employment.
Surname Blair, first name T.
Or rather, lack of it.
This form is important to you. Take good care of it. P45.
The tributes poured in on the most civilised day in the Commons anyone could remember.
For all of the heated battles across this dispatch box, for 13 years he has led his party, for 10 years he has led our country, and no one can be in any doubt in terms of the huge efforts he has made in terms of public service.
As the Prime Minister knows, he and I have had a number of disagreements, not least upon Iraq. But in relation to our personal dealings, he has been unfailingly courteous, and I would like to express my gratitude to him for that.
But I want to say that he treated me with the greatest of courtesy. I had many things that I disagreed with him on, but we faced them.
They seemed almost sorry to see him go. Back at number 10, there was a private sign-off with staff and advisors before the Blair clan emerged from that famous black door for the very last time. A final family photograph, posing for the feral beasts, as Mr. Blair had recently called the media. And Cherie made it clear she wouldn't miss them either. Then the ultimate duty, to round off his long, long farewell, a trip to the palace to tender his resignation to the Queen. Labour's longest-serving Prime Minister would leave just plain Mr. Blair. With a vacant sign up at number 10, Gordon Brown was wasting no time, clearing out his desk at the Treasury and heading off to take up the job he'd always dreamed of. After all, he's waited 10 years to succeed Tony Blair as Prime Minister. First stop, though, Buckingham Palace. That journey along the Mall a chance to consider the task ahead as Mr. Brown planned a new style of politics. He spent 55 minutes with the Queen accepting her invitation to govern. Gordon Brown emerged as Britain's new Prime Minister. A well-known quantity, but determined to prove he is a man of fresh ideas, a leader for a new political age. Watching all the comings and goings in Downing Street today, our political editor, Adam Bolton. Big day, big changes, big promises, Adam?
Yeah, I think at this stage, promises and style, really. Incidentally, speaking of goings, Gordon Brown actually left by the back door of Downing Street about an hour or so ago. I don't know where he's gone, maybe to a private celebration, more likely, I suspect, to his Commons offices to carry on working on his reshuffle and government changes, perhaps even to get that famous security briefing Prime Ministers get when they take office for the first time. But really what we've seen today so far is a change of style, a very sober performance by Gordon Brown, and we're just seeing now pictures of his predecessor, the last Prime Minister, Tony Blair, who is just arriving at Sedgefield. Much more smiley event there, and they've even got sun up north, I see. It's been pretty rainy here today, especially since Gordon Brown took over, funnily enough. It
sounded like he got a bit of a reality check when he first arrived up north in Darlington on his way to Sedgefield, Adam.
Well, you know, he's not Prime Minister anymore. He doesn't have the full security protection, and when he got off the train in Darlington, he appeared not really to know quite what to do or where his car was, and wandered around a bit. I think initially, to be frank, the Tony Blair and Cherie Blair will quite enjoy that. Mr. Blair said on a number of occasions that he regrets the fact that since he's become Prime Minister, he hasn't been able to pop down to the shops or drive a car. Of course, it does mean that travel is going to be a lot slower for him from now on, without the support of the official flights and the cars to drive you straight to get onto the plane rather than checking in and going through security like ordinary mortals. But Mr. Blair, I think, is prepared for this. I mean, we saw those pictures of him earlier in the week at the rather rainy garden party in the new London Square, where he's bought a house. He seemed quite relaxed there. I've seen him at private gatherings. The odd thing is, of course, is although he's going back to normal, lots of people want to have their pictures taken with him. So, and he's always pretty good-natured about standing around and posing. So I guess it's a bit like any other celebrity or television personality now, to a certain extent.
Adam, back to Sedgefield and his constituency. I mean, what do you think they're going to make of this very abrupt change of tack? When he announced he was stepping down as Prime Minister on May the 10th, I mean, he did say, I'm going to carry on serving you. He's been their MP for 24 years. They have every reason to think that he'd at least see it through to the next general election. They're not going to be best pleased, are they?
Well, I think that is the truth, although John Burton, his agent, did say back in May, and he said it again when I spoke to him last night, that it was always understood that if Tony Blair went on to another big international job, that he wouldn't obviously be able to serve his constituents in Parliament. So I think there was a certain amount of preparation of the ground done. A lot of people have been surprised by the pace of this Middle East envoy job coming about. Also important to note that John Burton, who really has acted almost as the local MP in Sedgefield throughout the Blair years and backed his bid for the Prime Ministership, he now is planning on stepping down as well. So I suspect the people of Sedgefield are probably ready for an MP who's not an international celebrity and who might look after local interests himself. And also, of course, as we were saying earlier, Jeremy, being Prime Minister gets more and more like being President. And to a certain extent, there are arguments for a clean break. Amongst other things, of course, Tony Blair will no longer have to give public account disclosure of his finances if he's not a Member of Parliament.
Adam, thanks. More from you a bit later on possible new cabinet appointments, I know. But right now, let's just take a look at the new kind of government with new priorities. That's what Gordon Brown's been promising as he entered Downing Street today as Prime Minister. But what does that actually mean? Who are the people likely to be charged with delivering Brown's new Britain? Sky's Joe Jones has been finding out.
There's something in the air at Westminster, across the country.
I've got about 4 minutes left.
This is what change feels like. Since 1997, we've had the small matter of 2 general elections, and yet only today comes a real sense of a shift in the balance of power. So, after an extremely long chat with the Queen, this is Gordon Brown turning back into Downing Street for the first time as Prime Minister. This is, after all, just a shift that we're seeing in the Labour leadership, but it will have a radical impact on the climate of British politics. New policies will come, and soon. They won't satisfy everyone. Critics of the war in Iraq aren't going anywhere. But Gordon Brown wants to shift the focus onto other issues. Will there be surprises? Personnel and policy?
I think there'll be a lot of surprises, actually. I think people should prepare the way, because I think he will be planning this for a long time, and he is a supreme strategist. So I think we'll see a lot of change underway and an awful lot of really exciting developments.
Keep up the good work.
And those developments will involve a new government, of course. John Cruddas here, who ran a formidable deputy leadership campaign, is one of those hoping to be brought into the fold. Others affect not to be too bothered.
Well, in politics, at this level, you're not masters or mistresses of your own destiny. It's up to other people to make decisions. But certainly what I have at the centre of all my politics is that I'm the MP for Salford.
The funny thing is, for all the media hype surrounding this event, not one of the current generation of big Labour hitters has come down here to speak to journalists. And you know why that is? Well, they're all sitting in their offices, waiting by the phone, hoping Gordon Brown will give them a job. Are you heading back over to Only those stepping back from the fray could afford to look relaxed.
And then, of course, for others, the excitement of waiting in the phone call, or Gordon and choosing his cabinet.
Excitement, that's one way of putting it.
Well, it is a very exciting time for people. There's no greater privilege than being asked to serve your country. And in the next 24, 48 hours, the new Prime Minister, Gordon, will choose the people that he thinks are fit to serve the people of this country. You've got to meet a pretty high standard to do that.
It could be too early for Tory defector Quentin Davis to think about getting a government position, but he's certainly given David Cameron a headache. And the Conservative leader's problems were underlined by a Sky News poll published today, which showed Brown's Labour snapping at his heels.
It's the Conservative Party that's been setting the agenda over this past year on the NHS, fighting to save our hospitals, on the environment, pushing that up the agenda. We're the ones coming up with the exciting and inspiring ideas for the future of our country. That is the role that we will play. I don't believe Gordon Brown can be the change Britain needs. He's the author of so many of our problems. He's been in the heart of the government for the last 10 years. People should have a chance to vote for change, and that should mean in a general election.
Tory and Labour will be watching the front door of Downing Street for comings and goings as the new administration takes shape. It's a long night ahead and there will be casualties. Patricia Hewitt and Margaret Beckett likely to be among the first. At least, though, after a 2-month hiatus, politics has started in earnest again. Joey Jones, Sky News, Westminster.
Well, tonight Mr Blair stepped down as PM and as an MP he's going to be taking up a new job. Much heralded, the international community's new Middle East envoy. Here's how it was confirmed this evening.
Following discussions among the principals, today the quartet dealing with the Middle East is announcing the appointment of Tony Blair as the quartet representative. Mr Blair, who is stepping down from office this week, has long demonstrated his commitment on these issues.
Our Foreign Affairs editor Tim Marshall is with me. No surprise he's getting the job, but tell us a little bit more about it, how it's going to work, how important this is.
The detail's interesting because the speculation was he would be UN Middle East envoy. Yes, that's the title, but what that usually means is you're trying to get the Middle East roadmap back on the map. You're trying to get a final status settlement between the Palestinians and the Israelis. He's not going to do that, apparently. Mr. Blair will be working closely with the Palestinians to try and build a Palestinian state, to give them his expertise of leadership and be able to bring in people to say, right, this is how you can build your state. Then you can go to the Israelis, then you can start talking. He'll have offices in Jerusalem, I've had that confirmed. He will not have offices in the immediate future in the West Bank. I think it's a bit too dangerous for him.
Gaza.
Or Gaza for sure. But I was told by his people this afternoon that he will be working with President Abbas of the Palestinians to try and get President Abbas of the Palestinians to get the people in Gaza and possibly even Hamas back inside that big tent. And that's very, very difficult, but he's got the job. It's going to be very interesting. I'm told he's already been on the phone with about 6 leaders in the region, including King Abdullah of Saudi Arabia. He can come in with money. Mubarak of Egypt come in with influence. King of Jordan, he's already spoken to President Abbas, and he's already spoken to Olmert of Israel. It's a big job. There's an awful lot of skepticism about it. The Middle East street doesn't really like him, but since when has the street mattered in those dictatorships? The leaders know him, and the leaders will play ball with him.
I guess one of the things he's probably going to want to know is who's he going to be talking to as the British Foreign Secretary?
Funny you should say that. We are confident at Sky News that Margaret Beckett will not be the Foreign Secretary under Mr Brown. Now, I'm talking to various people down here, and they're saying, look, this is because Mr Brown wants fresh faces, it's not because of her competence, and that's how they're trying to push this, because I am absolutely certain, is going to lose her job probably tomorrow. My money is on David Miliband to take over. If so, he'd be the youngest Foreign Secretary since Dr. David Owen of 1977. And David Miliband would bring a lot of expertise about finance and economics. And it also comes from DFID, to try and get people in from abroad and try and build up institutions abroad. And it'd be a very interesting appointment if it is David Miliband, because I know that Gordon Brown's whole world view is when he approaches foreign affairs, he does it through economics. He's already used a very interesting phrase, Jeremy, the Middle East economic roadmap. And so someone like David Miliband would be the man who would try to deliver Blair Brown's vision of foreign policy, which is about economics. It's about building up places like Africa, building up the Middle East. So I'm not saying it is going to be David Miliband. I don't know that. What I do know is that Margaret Beckett will not be the Foreign Secretary.
Intriguing days ahead. Tim, thank you very much indeed. Well, as Gordon Brown settles into number 10, A new poll carried out by Sky News and YouGov is going to make some encouraging reading. The poll puts the Tories under David Cameron at 37%, but Labour's ratings under Gordon Brown jumped 4% to 36%. Ming Campbell's Lib Dems still in the doldrums on a 12%. When it comes to Gordon Brown versus David Cameron, the sign's good for the new Prime Minister. He ranks higher than his Tory rival on trust and on leadership. Well, those polled thought that he would be better at running the NHS, the economy and education policy. But there is some comfort for David Cameron. He's ahead on charisma, foreign policy and the environment. That's according to the poll. We're joined now by Ben Page from Murray and also from Fraser Nelson from The Spectator. Gentlemen, very good evening to you. Ben, what do you make of those that poll and what you've been hearing, and whether Gordon Brown's getting a bit of a bounce from being a new man all of a sudden after 10 years?
I think there are signs. I mean, that poll is sort of in line with some of the things that we were seeing last weekend in one we've done most recent. And frankly, if he doesn't get a bounce with all of this coverage, with all of this brouhaha, he's in deep trouble. So we were expecting this, and it seems to be going sort of more or less as predicted.
Short term there, or can he sustain it? That's the big question.
That's absolutely the big question. That's why I'd say don't get too obsessed about opinion polls, despite the fact that I do them for a living, until after the party conferences, and then a month or two after that. But by January, business as usual will be resumed, and you, the media, will be getting your teeth into him, possibly.
Don't sell yourself short, Ben. But Fraser, what have you made of today, and what clearly is an attempt by Gordon Brown to resell himself to the public after 10 years in major office?
Well, it's been a day of great drama here in Westminster, seeing Blair get clapped out and stuff. You'd expect nothing less from the greatest showman in politics. Amazing to see the smile on Gordon Brown's face. It just doesn't look right, really. We're going to have to get used to seeing this smiling Chancellor. Can he resell himself? That depends a lot on what he's got to say the next few days. We've got the cabinet reshuffle, we're going to get that tomorrow, and then we'll get his new ideas, this new direction on the NHS he promised, and this intriguing phrase that he wanted to, what did he say? He wanted to make Britain keep the British way of life intact. What does he mean by that? Could it be something to do with immigration? We got the feeling, certainly at The Spectator, he's about to go down these roads on the hunt for votes in Middle England.
I mean, when you go out and poll people, Ben, I suppose there are images in people's minds which they then put down in form of answers. Now, the image of 10 years ago in Downing Street, that flag waving, the singing, the tunes, the triumphant young family Blair, such a contrast to, I thought, the slightly nervous and edgy Gordon Brown, unsure of trying to get his serious message over today.
Well, you know, that was then, this is now. A lot of water has gone under the bridge. You know, Brown has got his work cut out to convince Middle England, and it is those, you know, there are a number. It's a relatively small number of seats where Brown has got to play well, and he has a challenge because. Actually, if you look at how people rate him as a person, his ratings are better in Scotland, and the further south you go, and by the time you hit southwest England, rather less good. So he's got to persuade Middle England that he's a safe pair of hands, that he hasn't completely ditched Blair, but at the same time dealing with the negatives. You know, we will see. We will see. It's a completely different job being Prime Minister to Chancellor, but he's making a reasonable start.
So, I mean, you're a perfect man to answer this, Fraser. The Scottish factor, is it in play?
I think very much in play. I mean, Gordon Brown lives in a country now run by the Scottish Nationalist Party. The policies he'll announce tomorrow will not affect his constituents. If I was a Conservative, I'd be making great play of that, saying this is a guy sending English subsidy to Scotland. There's lots of mischief to be had here, I think. And Gordon Brown can't really hide his Scottishness. He tries now and again with his Britishness stuff and his flag waving. The problem is with him, the flags waved down here are a red cross in the white background.
And he did trot out his old school motto from Coddy High, didn't he?
He did, absolutely. I must try harder. It sounds like one of these boxer quotes from 1984. You know, I will do my best and stuff.
All a bit worthy, but he's worthy what we want.
Well, I think that if you listen, what the Brown camp pitch is simply that you've had shiny, happy, you know, possibly slightly superficial politics, and here is something solid, dependable, and it may be a bit boring, but maybe it's not. You know, it's not all about charisma. That's what they will be saying. Whether people will buy that, we will tell. You know, time will tell.
But at least it gives us maybe all something new to focus on.
Absolutely. I mean, I think all bets are off now with Cameron and Brown, because I do think the Tories have let slip massively. As your poll tonight shows, Gordon Brown is now ahead on areas where Cameron has been leading for a long time. You get the feeling that the momentum has shifted, perhaps even earlier than today. The question is how far Gordon Brown can milk this.
Fraser, thank you very much.
Thank
Ben,
you.
thank you as well. And as the rain lashes down here again, it's changing leaders, changing weather tonight. One man who may have escaped it, I don't know, is the former Prime Minister, Tony Blair, who's headed off for yet another rapturous farewell, this time in Sedgefield in his constituency. And we leave you these pictures. He says cheerio to them. He's standing down not only as Prime Minister, but an MP. We'll have more from Sedgefield in just a moment.
In the old days, if you fancied watching something half decent, you had to sit down when the newspaper told you. Then Sky Plus bowled into your life and that all changed. Now you watched quality stuff whenever you felt like it. Fast forward to 2007 and you clock this thing called Anytime on your TV guide. Get in, you chirp. See, Anytime brings you a tasty bunch of shows via Sky Plus and HD that you might just want to discover. Sky Anytime. Your Sky on demand.
Light, fluffy lemon soufflés made with fresh West Country cream. And 4 are yours, absolutely free, when you spend over £35 on food or drink at M&S until Saturday. This is not just summer food. This is M&S summer food.
Good morning, Yorkshire Building Society. No, we don't.
At Yorkshire Building Society, we didn't get to be Mortgage Magazine's Lender of the Year again by saying no.
No.
Though it might well have helped.
No.
Switch to us on one of our fee-free mortgages and you'll pay us no product fee, no valuation fee, no legal fee and no money transfer fee.
Nothing at all? No. Okay. Bye.
Simply call us, go into branch or visit ybs.co.uk. Do you want a coffee?
No. Yeah. Yeah.
Patch has got me through it. Looking forward to this.
You ready, love?
I think so. 3, 2, 1.
Group support worked for me.
I got advice by post and email.
There are loads of ways the NHS can help you get rid of cigarettes. Give us a call on 0800 169 0169. Press red or visit gosmokefree.co.uk.
Well, with the top job comes some pretty big decisions. Our correspondents have been looking at some of the challenges that Gordon Brown must face at home and abroad as the new Prime Minister.
The new man has a difficult trick to perform: distance himself from the war on terror while still prosecuting it under a different name. He will fight it using the military, the intelligence services and economics. Because Gordon Brown is an Atlanticist, agreeing with Tony Blair that the UK must stand shoulder to shoulder with the United States. What he won't do is make jokes with US presidents about sharing the same toothpaste. Gordon Brown was part of the process which took us to war in Iraq, and it's unlikely he'll pull all the British troops out for several years. On Israel and Palestine, he's already used a new term, calling for a Middle East economic roadmap. So there'll be more money for more countries, more money for MI5 and MI6, and there'll be more of the same for the UK. The war on terror will continue. It just won't be called that anymore.
As far as the special relationship with Washington's concerned, the timing of Gordon Brown's succession could be better. This current president, languishing in his own polls, has little to offer a new international partner at this stage in his game. Certainly from a British point of view, hearty handshakes with George Bush hold no currency. The president's all-take and no-give history with Tony Blair makes any new association politically risky. Add to that next year's US election with its certainty of change, but uncertainty yet of result. Much more than his predecessor, Gordon Brown has an under-publicised affection for this country. He visits often and has lots of friends here. So expect him to keep his powder dry until they elect a new successor to the White House, someone to cultivate for a longer-term relationship with the greater possibility of reward.
Gordon Brown's biggest environmental challenge is going to be energy. He has to decide whether to push the nuclear button and start a new generation of nuclear power stations. Planning is going to be an issue, as it will be for renewable energies as well. But he's going to have to get going on them if he's to meet the government's targets. Then he'll have to work on driving changes in our green behaviour. Do you tax us out of our bad habits or try to coax us out of them? Air passenger duty, road pricing, bin taxes, all controversial. Then there are the negotiations to reach a global Green Deal. With the Kyoto Protocol about to expire, but a change of heart in the White House, Gordon Brown has a chance to shape the diplomacy. But you'll have to get Britain's house in order. Carbon dioxide emission levels are rising here.
Crime and security is at the top of every Prime Minister's agenda. But for Gordon Brown, the issues are now more complex and controversial than they've ever been. A string of high-profile blunders at the Home Office forced his predecessor to split that department in two. And with the Home Secretary, John Reid, now throwing in the towel, who does Mr. Brown trust to sort things out? And how on earth can he get a grip on prison overcrowding? Can a Gordon Brown government still be tough on crime when there's nowhere to put the criminals?
Gordon Brown has vowed to make the NHS his priority. The debts are being cleared, but wards are being closed and jobs have been cut. Nurses have threatened industrial action. Doctors are furious about bungled attempts to streamline their training. The new Prime Minister will have to win back the support of staff if he's to revive the NHS. Waiting lists for surgery are at a record low, driven down by tough government targets. But many doctors and nurses are concerned about the amount of political control over what they do. And Gordon Brown will face calls for an independent board to run the NHS in future. Record funding has brought new hospitals and the very latest equipment. But MRSA is still a big problem, as is the lack of dentists. Gordon Brown must prove he has the right prescription for the NHS.
Whatever Gordon Brown's hopes and ambitions as Prime Minister, the first few months are almost certain to be dominated by what happens here. The future of Europe is one of those issues that every Prime Minister must just hope would disappear. And for Gordon Brown, it promises to be a rough ride. There is a feeling that France and Germany, with dynamic new leaders in Sarkozy and Merkel, are trying to drive Europe forward. And they're waiting to see what kind of leader Mr. Brown will be. The impression is that he's slightly suspicious of Europe, certainly from his time as Chancellor, and a real contrast to Mr. Blair and his love for everything European. He knows that too much enthusiasm for what goes on here risks turning public opinion at home, and the Conservatives know that as well. And there's always the looming shadow of the R word, a referendum, and that's enough to send a chill down his spine.
Gordon Brown's always been very keen to remind us about the successes of his decade at number 11 Downing Street, but a lot of the problems he created there will follow him next door. He can lay claim to an independent Bank of England, low inflation and a relatively strong economy, but his public spending splurge is going to have to be reined in by his successor. Rising taxes and household bills are making it increasingly difficult for wage earners to make ends meet. And then there's the pensions crisis. From the cradle to the grave, Brown's Britain has some serious problems to face.
Away from politics tonight to the floods, which are continuing to cause such chaos across many parts of the UK. A county court judge was among those killed by the rising waters, and there are fears that there's more rain to come. Sky's Jane Secker reports.
Roads turn to rivers, fields turn to lakes. In some parts of the country, the water just keeps on coming.
2 days after the deluge and Tolbar to the north of Doncaster, rising groundwater is still a problem. 90% of the homes down there are underwater.
The emergency services are carrying out patrols of houses and cars by boat to check no one is trapped. But they've spent much of the day here searching for a man who's believed to have fallen into a flooded dike nearby.
I was round the back of the farm when three of us heard a noise of somebody falling in the dike, which is a field behind our house, and they screamed and shouted, "Help, I've fallen in the dike." And then we didn't hear any more. And it's too flooded for me to go and look, so I rang the emergency services.
The water is also still deep in Catcliffe, south of Sheffield, which was evacuated 2 nights ago. Hundreds who live here are still in temporary accommodation, while the gash in the Ully Dam upriver is being patched with plastic sheeting, overlaid with tons of hardcore and rubble.
From the air, you really get a feel for the geography of this valley. At the very top, the Ully Dam, the engineers are still hard at work there trying to shore that up. Below it, hundreds of people's homes, and it's clear to see the damage that would be caused if the engineers don't succeed in their task.
And it's not just South Yorkshire that's affected. In Worcester, they've not seen flooding like it since 1969. This is the only way to get around the city's racecourse, now under 10 feet of water.
It's summer and we've got a flood. Might as well take advantage of it. It's a nice place to paddle.
In Powick, 8 miles south of Worcester, there was a rude awakening for 30 villagers who were rescued by the fire service in the early hours.
Dreadful. It was such a shock. You don't know what to do when it hits you. There was devastation. It's devastation.
Overall, though, the floodwaters do appear to be falling, and the long task of cleaning up the debris left behind has begun in Sheffield.
The waters that had divided this city in two are now starting to recede, but the Meadowhall shopping centre just down there is still closed for a second day, and the M1 motorway to the east of the city is eerily quiet.
Almost 20,000 people are still without power. Emergency aid is being offered to the worst affected areas. The sincere hope here is that the worst is now over, but with more rain forecast for the weekend, no one is taking any chances. Jane Secker, Sky News, Sheffield.
Plenty of rain in Westminster tonight, but it's not entirely rained on Gordon Brown's parade as he became new Prime Minister. Check out everything on sky.com/news, our website. Welcome to number 10. What do you want the new Prime Minister to do? And coming up, as Tony Blair heads home, we talk to one of his closest political allies.
Chewing on pedigree dental sticks every day can help prevent gum disease without any unpleasantness.
From July 1st, if it's an enclosed public place or workplace, it'll be against the law to smoke. If you do, you could be fined £50 or end up in court. England goes smoke-free, July 1st.
Air France, making the sky the best place on earth.
Garmin. For your nearest retailer, visit garmin.co.uk.
Quit smoking, and this is what you're up against. Smoking increases the number of receptors in your brain that thrive on nicotine. Take their supply away, they go mad. They won't let you break the habit without a fight. Nicotine reduces cravings because it contains therapeutic nicotine, so you can wean the beasts off gradually and give your willpower a fighting chance to do the rest. Tame the beasts and quit with nicotine.
Sky Sports this July. England face the West Indies and welcome India for 2 tests. There's top quality golf from Europe and the US Seniors Tour.
Speedway's finest gear up for the World Cup. There's darts from the World Match Play in Las Vegas, show jumping from Hickstead, World Match Play bowls, and the return of Fishermania. July on Sky Sports. For details on how to join in, call 08702 407 726.
Welcome back to Westminster on Gordon Brown's big day. He became Prime Minister, took the baton from Tony Blair, who headed straight up to his constituency of Sedgefield and found it quite a different life today. A bit of a come down to earth as he had to get on without all the paraphernalia of Prime Minister. He's just been inside Trimton Labour Club delivering a speech explaining what his future holds, the fact he won't be their MP for much longer. Gerard Tubbs, our man in the Sedgefield constituency. Gerard, tell us what's been going on.
Well, of course, he came here this evening no longer as their MP, because as soon as that warrant was signed and he took over the Chiltern Hundreds, he is no longer an MP here. Sedgefield does not have an MP, so he was just coming here to explain why he had done that when Number 10, of course, just back in May was saying, no, there's no truth in the fact that he's going to be standing down as an MP. He didn't say that, it must be said. So he was able to come here and say, look, I got this big job as an envoy to the Middle East, and he told the constituency party members, and they were the only ones allowed in, he told them it's one thing to be absent from the constituency as Prime Minister, quite another thing to be absent in the Middle East, and therefore I'm standing down. The last thing he told them was, he said, the last thing I want to say from this stage is thank you, and at that point he got his standing ovation. He's still inside the Labour Club behind me and is answering questions from constituency Labour Party members. I've seen one of the invitations that was sent out 2 days ago, bizarrely dated today, but stamped on the envelope on the 25th, and it said that the constituency party was trying to save money. So it was only sending one letter to each household, and would you please pass it on if there's anyone else in the household who's also a Labour Party member. It said that they had to bring ID and that only constituency Labour Party members from this constituency would be allowed in. So they're still getting their last two penneth from the former Prime Minister, and everyone is having to try to remember not to call him Prime Minister, including, it must be said, his official spokesman, who admitted it was a little difficult to remember to call him now Mr. Blair.
So what are they making of it up there?
We were just discussing this earlier. It is a strange feeling, and people are saying, well, you know, he wasn't so bad, he did quite a good job, it's a shame he's not staying. It's a bit like when you sell a house, you know, and you give it a lick of paint and you get the estate agent round and then you sit down and think, why are we leaving this place? So there is this kind of feeling that, you know, perhaps the Prime Minister was quite a good constituency Labour MP, and really, I think in a lot of people's hearts of hearts, when they sit down and think about it, he has been very good for the constituency, because John Burton, his agent, is a very able Labour politician. He's been a Labour politician here for years, and he has, of course, had the added ability to say to people, it's John Burton here, Tony Blair's agent, can we sort whatever the problem is out? And of course, things get sorted out. So I think they will notice when they haven't got Tony Blair as their MP anymore, when they wake up tomorrow and a constituent has a problem and he rings up and it's just a normal Labour Party constituency again. I think they're probably going to miss him.
Thank you very much. Gerard, back to you for a bit more later on. I think we're hoping to talk to John Burton, his agent in Sedgefield, very shortly as well, a man who has always had the inside track on Tony Blair's life and times and his political aspirations over the last 24 years as Sedgefield MP, which ended today. Well, a new era began as well, a new Prime Minister, so let's get a flavour of that today as Tony Blair handed over to the man who was his Chancellor.
Details of employee leaving work. Surname Blair, first name T. It said actually Mr., Mrs., Miss or other. This form is important to you. Take good care of it. P45.
For 13 years he has led his party. For 10 years he has led our country. And no one can be in any doubt in terms of the huge efforts he has made in terms of public service.
As the Prime Minister knows, he and I have had a number of disagreements, not least upon Iraq.
But in relation to our personal dealings, he has been unfailingly courteous, and I would like to express my gratitude to him for that.
He's entered on another colossal task. I hope that what happened in Northern Ireland will be repeated, and at the end of the day he'll be able to look back and say it.
I will try my utmost. This is my promise to all of the people of Britain. And now let the work of change begin. Thank you.
In a land of make-believe, you've got to have faith.
The Hogfather is unavailable.
Or it all starts falling to pieces.
So for the sun to come up tomorrow morning, the Hogfather has to be alive.
Precisamente.
What if he's dead?
Starring David Jason and an all-star cast. Terry Pratchett's BAFTA award-winning Hogfather. Wednesday at 9, Sky 1 and Sky 1 HD.
Hyundai Tucson. Paint your day full of adventure. Complete with Hyundai's 5-year unlimited mileage warranty.
At B&Q, we've cooked up an irresistible offer. Now you can enjoy a mouth-watering third off all select kitchens. So how's that for starters? Get more out of your kitchen at B&Q.
If you need financial help, who can you turn to for all your borrowing needs in just a stroke? Whoever you are, whatever you do, due to Ocean's new and expanded product range, we could help you. Whether you want to raise extra money, reduce your outgoings, improve your home. In fact, whatever your needs, choose a name you know and can trust. Call Ocean anytime on 0800 858 858 or apply online at oceanfinance.co.uk. Think bigger. Think better. Think Ocean.
Patch has got me through it. Looking forward to this.
You ready, love?
I think so. 3, 2, 1.
Group support worked for me.
I got advice by post and email.
There are loads of ways the NHS can help you get rid of cigarettes. Give us a call on 0800 169 0169, press red or visit gosmokefree.co.uk.
Well, as Prime Minister, Tony Blair made around £187,000 a year. As an ex-Prime Minister, well, we're told the sky's the limit. He could make millions. So let's find out a bit more about his future away from Westminster with Jeremy Kent, who's a brand and marketing expert. Very good evening to you, Mr. Kent. So how good, how strong, how marketable is brand Blair?
Well, I think it's a very marketable brand indeed. He's just stepped down as a world statesman. He's had his hands on the levers of power for 10 years, and I would expect that an awful lot of people would be interested in hearing what he's got to say.
So how can he actually sell himself? What are the marketable bits? How does he go about it?
Well, I think that he will be approached by a great many people now for his thoughts, his wisdom, his guidance on a number of subjects. but also it'll be on the after-dinner circuit. Plus two, I would imagine, books and films. It's been quite an eventful 10 years. However, I think the key to Blair as a brand is what's going to happen to him next in the Middle East, and whether or not that brand is big enough to embrace and engage with all the different parties involved out there.
Let's just look at one aspect. You were talking about the lecture circuit. What's to be made there for a man of his status?
I would imagine that he's going to be right up there with ex-President Bill Clinton. It's a very lucrative environment. It's one which will enable him to span the Atlantic.
And the sort of income from that potential?
I would say, hand on heart, I couldn't say honestly, but I would guess it would be in the millions. Certainly the rights to Blair's story would be in the millions.
So no doubt he's already been talking to publishers or is thinking of doing so. What could an advance on a book be worth?
Oh, £250,000, £500,000? Who knows? It's up to Blair and his negotiating skills, and obviously with the publishers too, as to how much they think they can sell.
I suppose one of the difficulties, isn't it, is a balancing act between sort of the integrity of the office he's fulfilled and fulfilling his marketing potential without perhaps overstepping that fine line.
Well, there is that, but at the end of the day, it's the integrity of the office that he's left that people are interested in. So that will be a very large part of the brand, and it will be core to the story. It is the 10 years in Downing Street that most people are interested in, not those preceding, and there may well be more to come with a second book.
And of course, some former Prime Ministers have found a very lucrative stream of income from company directorships, consultancies and that sort of thing.
There is always that, but it does tend to be more cabinet ministers, whereas Prime Ministers tend to move and play on a bigger stage. And I think accepting the Middle East envoy role today will keep Tony Blair away from that commercial sector for some time to come.
It looks as if, I mean, that's going to be a pretty full-time role for the time being, so one would expect that a lot of these other tempting commercial opportunities for Brand Blair may have to be put on hold.
Quite possibly, but at the end of that process, at the end of the time that his envoyship comes, you don't know what Blair would be worth then. Hopefully, he will have achieved a great deal in the Middle East, and I suspect that might be a bigger story.
I imagine he's going to need an agent or two, isn't he, to manage all this?
I'd be surprised if he hasn't already got one.
So if you were stepping into the breach to fulfil that role at the moment, what would you be telling him? What would be the list of priorities?
I think Tony Blair's always managed it very well. There was an expression attached to Ronald Reagan that he was the Teflon president, and I would suggest that Tony Blair's been very much like that during his 10 years in office. So I think that Tony Blair's core brand, his brand values, are already in place and are very marketable indeed. It's now a question of measuring those out and matching them to the audience needs in the wider community.
Well, Jeremy Kent, thank you very much indeed. Just an idea of what Brand Blair could be. It could be right up there challenging Brand Beckham, couldn't it, in the most sought after of the modern day British brands to be put around. And Gordon Brown was making the very point today, wasn't he, about the best of British and making the most of the talents and ambitions of people in this country. Let's just remind ourselves where Tony Blair is right now, though. He's up talking to the people of his constituency for the last 24 years in Sedgefield in County Durham and explaining to them why he's no longer their MP, having applied for the Chiltern Hundreds, it's called, which allows him to step away as a Member of Parliament for Sedgefield without more ado, so that he can take up this role of the envoy to the Middle East on behalf of the quartet of the UN, the US, the EU and Russia, and it's expected he'll be setting off on that role pretty soon. In the meantime, he's saying a fond farewell after 24 years to the constituents of Sedgefield.
Zesta! I thought of it instantly when Magnet asked for an object that sums up what happens in my kitchen. I love adding extra zing to things. My personal magnet designer said she'd do the same to my new kitchen and suggested these funky cooling drawers and an island with a teppanyaki hot plate. As for the colour, well, it had to be orange.
Get a free American cooler or a free flip-down TV and dishwasher in the Magnet half-price sale. Magnet, what happens in your kitchen?
Free bingo,
All day long. Man, they gotta be crazy. Calabingo, where more people who win go.
Good morning, Yorkshire Building Society. No, we don't.
At Yorkshire Building Society, we didn't get to be Mortgage Magazine's Lender of the Year again by saying no.
No.
Though it might well have helped.
No.
Switch to us on one of our fee-free mortgages and you'll pay us no product fee, no valuation fee, no legal fee and no money transfer fee.
Nothing at all? No. Okay. Okay, bye.
Simply call us, go into branch or visit ybs.co.uk.
Do you want a coffee?
No. Yeah. Yeah.
Because sometimes it's hard to start some tools. Black & Decker introduced their best balanced string trimmer with automatic line feed. Just plug it in and go. It's our most powerful electric string trimmer ever.
Quit smoking, and this is what you're up against. Smoking increases the number of receptors in your brain that thrive on nicotine. Take their supply away, they go mad. They won't let you break the habit without a fight. Nicotine reduces cravings because it contains therapeutic nicotine, so you can wean the beasts off gradually and give your willpower a fighting chance to do the rest. Tame the beasts and quit with nicotine.
Any time of the day or night, you might feel like a film. So we've made getting a Sky movie even easier. It's as easy as a click. There's over 300 to choose from. Take your pick. With one tiny click, you can open up a world of fantastic film on your PC at no extra cost. It's amazing what you can fit down a broadband connection. For Sky Movies whenever you like, just go to sky.com/anytime. Pick a flick and click.
Coming up in the next hour on Sky News, after 10 years of waiting, Gordon Brown becomes Britain's 52nd Prime Minister. Tony Blair bows out of British public service and moves to the international stage.
Snow. As seen by Qatar Airways passengers, your five-star airline.
Well, you've seen the coverage from Westminster and you've seen the showers that have come and gone. And Wimbledon too. The sun has tried to come out in the flood-stricken regions, but the showers have been growing. One or two are getting quite heavy as they depart through London and away. Looks like we'll have a cold night because there's largely clear skies coming, although it's raining, in London at the moment, but the clear skies are coming, cold night. And then the cloud and rain begins to develop again out to the west and eventually moves into Wales and England, but late in the day. So there's a Thursday of drying up, getting better sort of weather for the flood-hit regions of North Midlands. The mobility's still there, all the heavy weather's over Scandinavia. You see, out in the Atlantic, this is the problem. It's right out here, just coming into shot, just coming out of the USA on the forecast, on the predictive sequence. It looks like we're in for a wet outlook. This is Thursday, middle of the day. The Mediterranean countries doing fine, happy summertime weather. I think starting on Friday, it'll be wet. And as the sun gets up, so this rain will clear away. But then Saturday, another band of rain. This could be a deluge.
The weather, sponsored by Qatar Airways.